Welcome to the Inside Scoop, your one-stop shop for cracking the leadership code. Have you ever wondered what those conversations are like in the boardroom? Curious about the secret sauce successful executives possess? On the Inside Scoop podcast, we sit down with successful executives, getting their unique perspective on what it takes to be a good leader. They'll share their hard-won wisdom, the crucial competencies needed to thrive as a leader, and the unexpected lessons learned along the way. Here, we unlock the secrets of the executive suite. We get the inside track directly from the leaders themselves. In each episode, we'll dissect the essential skills needed to go from manager to leader, offering a leader's perspective on the challenges, triumphs, and unexpected wisdom they've acquired. The Inside Scoop, leadership lessons, served fresh.
Glad you're with us for another episode of the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Eduardo Bryant. This podcast is available wherever you get your podcast. Here is where we swing open the executive boardroom doors and we give you a peek at the conversations that take place in there. Most people are not privy to what goes on in there. If you hear something good, some really good stuff, we invite you to subscribe and become part of our viewership. We've got a good one for you today. Our guest is Jason Bazemore. He sits at the top of his company, OC Medical Device. He's the vice president of sales, marketing, lots of good stuff. You're really going to want to hear what he has to say. So let's just get right into it. Jason, how are you, man?
I'm good, Eduardo. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are welcome. As we start off, one of the things I like to know is, what are you reading right now? You know, executives want to stay at the top of their game, so they're always keeping their mind sharp. What are you reading?
So mine's a little interesting. I'm actually reading a book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. So the title is a little deceptive. It has nothing to do with violence. It's the art of empathetic communication. And so I practice it with my children. I practice it with people at work. I practice it in sales. I practice it with my wife constantly. She's actually the one that introduced me to this. We had a little tough time and we were struggling, and she went out and found this, and it really turned our marriage around in an amazing way. If you think of the theory behind empathy, it's if you and I sit and you're feeling a specific way, and I just simply say, "Hey, Eduardo, I'm hearing you say that, when I do this, it makes you feel this way, or you're feeling this way." And I put it out there, it's going to bring you to 90% of people out there are going to want to give that empathy back. And then it's, you have to make a request. What is your request of me or my request of you? And you have to understand it is just that. It's a request. It's not a demand. So I have to be okay with you saying no to my request and genuinely be okay with that. But when you break communication down that way, it's amazing how quickly we call it chatter, the chatter that goes on your head when you talk, or like if you and I are having a conversation and, I get chatter going because I'm upset about something and it goes. When you use empathetic communication, that chatter just sort of subsides and goes away. And it's very easy to take emotion out because you feel heard, you feel understood, and you want to make the other person feel that way.
And I can imagine that's really good. And I can imagine, certainly being in your position, you're going to have a lot of chatter going on. There's things happening from all different angles.
Yes.
And just even being here with us today, I know you've had a couple of challenges of things that have happened, but look at how you have persevered your way and actually made it so that you can do the podcast. I mean, I'm impressed with that. Share a little bit about that.
Sure. So I've been having some shoulder pain, and I had a cervical disc replacement at C5, C6 about 3 years ago. And I train jujitsu 5 days a week. I've got some issues going on with the shoulder. I've got some radiculopathy going down into my right arm. But last night, in the middle of the night, I woke up shivering, and I couldn't stop shivering. And I typically sleep hot. And I mean, I was shaking the entire bed like an earthquake. I was shivering, teeth chattering. My wife wrapped me up in blankets, put, a hat on me, a winter hat, wool socks. We could not stop it. And so eventually we had to bring me to the emergency room. And I'm thinking, oh, I probably have like a pinched nerve in my neck or something, in the shoulder. And come to find out, I've actually got pneumonia in both lungs.
Double pneumonia?
Double pneumonia, yeah.
That's pretty serious.
Yeah, so they kept me overnight. They ran some IV antibiotics overnight, and then they put me on a course of 2 different antibiotics for the next 7 days.
All right. Well, how do you feel?
I actually feel really well,
Okay.
all things considered.
All things considered, huh? I've and it's funny you say that in that I don't feel 100% today. I don't have double pneumonia, thank God. But I've got like this nasally kind of sinuses want to run, so something's going on in my head. So between your double pneumonia and me having the sniffles over here, I think we can make our way through this.
There you go.
Yeah. So, as we think about it, we talk about this episode of the Inside Scoop and how an executive like yourself, having those privied conversations in the boardroom, there's a level of success that you have achieved that certainly a lot of people have not. People want to hear, how did you get to where you are, where you sit up at the top of the sales department, the marketing department, you know, engineering, all the things that you do? That journey could not have been easy. How did you get there?
No, it wasn't easy. Honestly, I think perseverance is a large part of it. Perseverance and work ethic. I was a wrestler when I was young. I wrestled my whole life. I was an All-American wrestler. A lot of that athletic mentality stuck with me when it comes to working. I actually had a coach when I was in high school that used to give us quotes to remember. And if you couldn't remember the quote verbatim when he covered it up, you would have to do push-ups. The whole team would have to. He would ask you, Mr. Bazemore, can you tell me what E.M. Gray had to say? And one of those quotes was, the successful person has a habit of doing things others don't like doing. They don't like doing them either necessarily, but their disliking is subordinated to the strength of their purpose.
Ah,
And that was E.M. Gray. And that has stuck with me to this day. I think there's a lot of that. Sometimes you just have to be willing to do what others aren't willing to do.
mm,
Whether it's hard work, whether it's grinding it out, sometimes it's asking questions. I think a lot of the times when you get to a higher position, you're scared to ask questions because it's going to expose that you don't know everything. I think you're not supposed to know everything. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there's some things that I'm not very good at, which I can tell you, I'm a horrible tech person. So like, you give me a PowerPoint or something like that, I'm outsourcing that to my wife or my child. Uh,
yeah.
but if you want me to sit down and think strategically about how to grow a company and how to structure this thing for long-term success with proper margins, that's in my wheelhouse. That I can do. Um, but I always like to surround myself with people that I think would like to have my job in the next 5 years. I think at a higher level, sometimes we get intimidated by that. We want to hire yes men. I don't ever really want to hire yes men. I want people around me that are going to challenge me and push me, because I think of it almost like NASCAR. We're all going to get around the track faster if we draft off of each other. And maybe I'm the guy at the lead today and somebody else is at the lead tomorrow, but we're all still going to get to the finish line faster if we work together.
Mhm. That's a good point. You talk about being a yes man, and I think a lot of people do that, right?
Yeah.
They surround themselves by those people who will go along with the narrative and kind of make them feel good, almost like an ego booster there.
It makes you feel fuzzy.
It does, yeah. This drive that you're talking about, I heard you say that you do jujitsu, what,
Yeah.
5 days a week?
I try to train 5 days a week.
Okay.
I
Okay.
travel a lot, so I do a lot of drop-ins on the road.
Are you doing anything competitively, or are you just training?
So I compete as well.
Okay.
So kind of the backdrop here, I was a wrestler my whole life, and I'd gotten married. My first marriage was a bad marriage. I had let myself go and I was really out of shape. I was 356 pounds. I looked a little bit like Sasquatch. And my oldest daughter had asked me if I would get back into shape and lose weight and start to train a friend of hers who was a wrestler at our local high school. Well, I ended up losing my daughter to suicide. Um, and I started a foundation in her name. I do talks about teen suicide prevention, teen mental health awareness. I travel to schools. But in the year after she passed, in that first, maybe it was 14 months, I lost 130 pounds, and I ended up training her friend to 2 consecutive state titles. Um, and then it was, where do I go from here? I coached the high school for several years, and I found jujitsu. And for an old guy who used to love to roll around and wrestle, it was perfect for me. And I started training pretty hard. Funny enough, the gentleman that owns the school I train at, I coached him when he was a high school wrestler.
Oh, wow.
And I do compete now. I compete in what we would call the masters division, which we joke around and say it's the old man's division.
No man's division.
Yeah. And so the world championships are actually the last week in August and first week in September out in Vegas this year.
Okay, are you going to be there?
Absolutely.
Are you competing?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll all be rooting you on. That's a pretty tough sport, though. That takes a lot of discipline to do jujitsu.
It does. It's physically demanding. And it's I think it's the art of becoming comfortable in uncomfortable situations, which there's a lot of translation to work and to life and to family with that. You know, when you have somebody on top of you that's trying to choke you or smother you or take an arm or a leg off, you have to really kind of search inside and find a way to get comfortable there and say, okay, I'm not dead yet. I'm okay where I'm at. I can stay here for a second and kind of figure out the puzzle of how to get out of this. And when you train your mind to slow down and do that, it becomes applicable in a lot of other areas of life. I find that translates into work, it translates into family, it translates into, a little bit of everything that I do.
Yeah. You know, when I think about what you just said, and I think about how people have to push themselves to get to another level, how do you recover from that intensity?
So,
Mentally, it's one thing, but physically, it's another.
yes, and especially at my age, I'm 50 now, so I have to really think about my recovery time for my body. Um, I take an ice bath every morning. I do a cold plunge, which has been it's been wonderful for me. I get up, I get out of bed, I go downstairs, I have my ice bath outside here in lovely New Hampshire, so it's pretty cold right now. Um, so I do my ice bath. My wife is really into yoga, so she has me do some yoga with her and some stretching that really helps me with my mobility and my flexibility. And then I spoiled ourselves 2 years ago. I got an orthopedic hot tub, and that sits outside right off the deck, and it's got like the jets in it are designed by orthopedic surgeons for therapeutic. When I first bought it, I'm like, it sounds fancy. I don't know. But I can tell you, we're in that thing almost every night, and it really does wonders for my body for recovery.
That's good. That's
Yeah. It's also turned into the kids will get in the tub with us and we'll sit and talk about our day. And we do this thing we call best and worst. What was your best part of the day? What was your worst part of the day? And mom and dad do it and the kids do it. So we all do it together. We share a little bit about our day with each other, and it turns into a really nice social piece.
You know what? Family time is the best.
Yeah.
And things like that go into your work life. I mean, so you talk about the personal stuff and how
Yeah.
you're driven and how people really are motivated to just have things in their personal life work well, whether it's jujitsu or it's doing something else. And that got to transcend over into the professional side of your life. So as you think about your professional side, you said that you are the vice president of sales marketing. What else? What other hats do you wear there in the company?
So we're a very small company. I wear a lot of hats. I kind of am a one-man show, so I do have somebody from one of our other divisions that helps with my regulatory, but I kind of oversee quality, regulatory, the engineering piece. I outsource, but I've actually gotten to where I'm almost dangerous with some SolidWorks programs now.
Yeah.
So I'm hands-on with almost every aspect of the business, and it's been a wonderful growth and learning experience for me to make me a little bit more well-rounded and a little bit more polished at what I do. Um,
Excuse me.
but from managing P&Ls to looking at new projects, like, we need to design and develop a lot of new products to fill out our bag. So, assembling a team of surgeons to do that. What does it look like with the quality piece? What does it look like with engineering and design? And then, writing your 510(k) approval to the FDA and making sure you're able to get your approvals. And then manufacturing. How many sets of instruments do we need? How many implants do we get on the front end? You don't want to end up with back orders, but you also don't want to end up with stuff sitting on the shelf for a year collecting dust, you know?
That is very true. So now, for the guy that's driving in his car right now and he's listening to this podcast and he's thinking to himself, I can identify with Jason because I'm kind of there as well. Think about some of the nuggets that maybe you can offer that guy or girl that is listening to this saying, now, what do I need to do to take my game to the next level, to get over the hump? Because there's a area that typically holds us back.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's we just are not prepared, or perhaps we don't have the skills. But there's something that holds us back that keeps us from going to the next level. talk to us a little bit about what do you see as some of those things that you can say, you know what, if the people would just do this, or here's some things I found to be successful that work really well.
Well, and you touched on a couple of them. I think often it's fear or a lack of confidence.
Mm,
I think that hinders us in everything that we do. So one of the things that I've really embraced is I have an inner circle of, maybe you would want to call them mentors. These are guys I've known for a long time that I trust and I think very highly of. Some of them were former vice presidents of sales of mine when I was a sales rep. One of them was a CEO when I was a sales rep. And come full circle, one of them that was my VP of sales eventually ended up working for me when I was a VP. So, but I have that circle and I always call it's a round table. So getting people that are like-minded and having us sit at a table and discuss, hey, Eduardo, this is really beating me up, man. How would you handle this? Or what do you do to have success in this area? Because you're never going to be excellent at everything that you do, but I'm going to have a skill set where I'm going to be very good in some areas and I'm going to have some weaknesses as well. And if your strengths complement my weaknesses and vice versa, my strengths complement your weaknesses, you and I are going to become great allies. We're going to work well together. And so when you can get a group of people in your inner circle like that, that you can pick their brain, they can pick your brain, I think it gives you the confidence and takes some of that fear away because you have these other people that you know have done it, you know they're successful. And when they're telling you, dude, you got this. Like you're spot on. You got this. I think it puts a little bit of pep in your step.
that sounds like a level of motivation that I think we all need because as a leader, people listen to what we say. And when you
Yes.
say something, they take that to heart. And so now they respond or react to that. So you want to be able to be not only positive toward people, but you want to be genuine and real because that's what's going to help them. Now, there are
Yeah.
those who try, and they find themselves on the edge. I know myself personally, I've talked many people off the ledge, as they say. And sometimes you get to that ledge and you just don't think that you can really go over. So if you were in a boardroom and you were having a conversation, give us a little bit of that scoop on how you talk people off the ledge or you pull people back and have them understand there's another way. What can I do to make it better? I understand that I'm close and I'm not quite there, but now I want to be able to take whatever is negative in front of me and reel it back and turn it into something that is positive. That takes a special something.
It does. And I mean, I would say you could even go back to what we opened with a little bit of that empathetic conversation, letting that person that's got that fear, letting them know you understand. But I hear that you're scared. I understand that. And you're telling me that you're feeling that way because of this and this. You know, if we're able to do this or this, will that alleviate that? Will that bring you back into the fold? I think the other part of it there too, for me, it's I was told early on in my career in sales, I had a vice president of sales who I still adore and I talk to all the time. His name is Nathan Harris. And Nathan told me one day after doing a sales call with me, he said, man, there's people that are passionate, but you're an evangelist. So if you have passion in what it is that you're doing, that's infectious. You know, just like when you're in an organization, somebody that's really got a negative attitude, it can quickly become a cancer and it can run rampant through an organization. Somebody that's got passion, they're excited about what they're doing, they understand it, and they're really eating it, drinking it, breathing it, sleeping it. That also can become contagious and it can run through an organization.
Where did that come from? Because we talk about having passion and we talk about something that is a driving force. For you, that phrase that Nathan, shout out to Nathan there,
Yep.
who says that you're an evangelist for it. So, I mean, you're preaching it and walking the walk and talking and doing that. Where did that come from, Jason? Where did
So
that?
I think I've been blessed in my career. I've always managed to carry or represent a product that I truly believed in and that it was going to improve patient outcomes and it was going to benefit patients. So at the end of the day, you might agree to disagree that you don't like its clinical benefits or economically it's not going to benefit the hospital. And I'll shake your hand and walk away, but I'm never going to let somebody tell me that my products are not going to give them better patient outcomes and it's not going to be a better modicum of care for their patients.
Mm, mm. So that's kind of you believe it.
I do. I do. I don't think maybe once in my career I've been in a situation where I had a Me Too product line. It was fine. It was a commodity product line, but there was really nothing differentiated about it. There was nothing that was better than anybody else's. It was, hey, my screw is like his screw, but mine's green and his is purple.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, And then it takes some of the skill out because then what are you selling on? You're either selling on price. It's a race to the bottom. If I can cut my prices and, then you cut yours and I cut mine again, and it turns into a race to the bottom that hurts us all.
Mhm.
Or, you're selling on service. That's another thing I've done in the past where I'm going to service the heck out of you. And I'm going to make sure that, you feel the love for me and like, wow, this guy's really on the ball. And every time I need something, he's there for me. And that's how I'll win the business if I don't feel like I can do it simply with a better product. I think the ideal scenario is to do it with a combination of both.
Mm. So now let's use a scenario. Let's say I'm a salesperson and let's
Mhm.
say I work for you.
Yep.
From the perch with which you sit, looking and seeing what I'm doing in my operation. And I'm asking you, Jason, how, what? Give me some advice. Give me a couple of things that you would say, hey, Eduardo, here is something that I think you should do in order to succeed and be successful. So as you think about that, I'm trying to get there. You're my boss, and I need to be successful. And I'm not quite where I am. In other words, I didn't win President's Club,
Yeah.
so I don't get to go on the trip. And I'm like, I need help here. Give me
I think
something.
my first thing I would ask you, what do you do to plan your day and what do you do to plan your week? What do you do to plan your month? And where is that plan? So is it in your head? Because I write everything I do in my notebook.
Okay.
And so to me, a plan isn't a plan until it's written down. Other than that, it's just a hope or a pipe dream or a thought.
Yeah.
When you write it down, it becomes a plan. So I would always tell my sales guys, write down your plan, write down your attack strategy, and it doesn't have to stay. That can change. That's fluid. But if you write it down, you're committing to it. And until you commit to it, how could you be successful? You might think of here are all the things that I want to do, but think of all the distractions you have in your day that could pull you away from that. But when it's in writing in front of you and it's almost like your to-do list and you're checking them off one by one, I'm going to make these 20 calls today. I'm going to get in front of these 10 customers today. I'm going to follow up with these 3 people today. I'm going to, schedule an in-service for this account today. Whatever it is that you set for yourself at the end of the day, when you can sit and say, hey, I checked off 14 of my 16 things. I'm going to, let 2 of these flow into tomorrow. I had a pretty good day.
Would you call that a form of pre-call planning?
Yes, pre-call planning and even almost uh, you got to plan for your calls. I would say planning for your territory. How do you attack a new territory as a salesperson, or how do you attack this geography you have? Especially if it's a large multi-state geography, where do you go? Where do you focus your time? Is your company more suited towards going towards teaching institutions? With the larger institutions where you have a fellowship and a residency program. Or do you have a product that maybe is going to be more difficult to get approved, so you're never going to get into that teaching institution? So you have to focus on the smaller community hospitals, the ASC setting, where it's a little bit easier to get a product approved. It's a little kind of lower barrier to entry.
Mhm.
So knowing where to go and where to spend your time, and to your point, yes, planning out your calls. If I'm going to call on a new surgeon, I want to know where he trained, what he or she trained in, what their background is. Do they have an engineering background along with being a doctor? All those things are so pertinent. And I actually try to go a step further and find out what their surgical techniques are, whose implants they're using, where they've been over the last 10 years. So when I get into a conversation with them, maybe I know somebody they trained with. Maybe I know somebody they worked with at their former hospital, or the distributor that happens to carry the product line they know is somebody I've been connected with for 17 years, and we can have a really nice fluid conversation about what they're currently doing in the OR.
So as a leader, what do you do when one of your reps says, or any rep says, Jason, I got too many of these guys to call on. I don't have time to do all that background research on them. That just takes way too long. I'll learn it once I show up at the clinic or the hospital. That's when I'll figure all that out. But for me to go do all this research and I got 200 of these guys, I don't have time for that.
I'd say you focus on your top 20 and you do it the right way, because in this business, you usually don't get a second chance. If I go and I do a bad sales call, I'm probably not going to get back in the door again. So I don't have to close you. I just have to make sure I didn't do anything to turn you off in a way that you won't let me back in when I want to call on you later. And that's something I was very successful at early in my career. I brought my notebook to every sales call and I asked questions of the surgeons and I wrote down their answers. Like I was writing down as fast as I could when they were talking to me, and they saw that. They knew this guy's genuine. He's not just kind of blowing smoke. He's learning. And I would go back to them 6 months later and I'd say, hey, geez, Dr. Bryant, you told me this 6 months ago. I feel like I've kind of learned what you were talking about, but now it splits off into three different forks in the road. Can you help me understand the next step of that? I'm not even trying to sell you anything at this point. I'm convincing you to become my mentor and to teach me. And once we've developed that relationship, at a certain point, you're going to be like, Jason, man, what do you have that I can use? I really like talking to you. You know, you're a good dude. What do you have that I can use? And that was early on. That's how I had most of my success selling, was getting close to these guys because they had a base of knowledge I didn't. And the only way for me to get that transfer of knowledge was to ask questions, to take notes, and to be humble.
Mm. Yeah, once you become a resource for people, you become that resource, and that's when they want to talk to you. They want to see you.
Yeah.
They will call you back and say, yeah, I know. I remember years ago we learned this thing that where a doctor would say, that rep bugs the snot out of me. And then the office staff says, well, why do you keep seeing him? And the doctor said, because he brings me value to my business every time he comes in. I can't stand him, but he brings me something. Well, you don't want to be in the I can't stand you category, but you definitely want to be in the I bring some value.
Yeah. And I was like I say, I was blessed early on. I one of my first sales calls on a surgeon that was in the middle of nowhere in Maine, and I brought my bag of products in, and I sort of just dumped it on the table, and I had verbal diarrhea of all the things the marketing department told me to say. And he was a big dude, and he just looked at me and he said, "Hey, 90% of what you just said doesn't even make sense, and it has no clinical value to me whatsoever." And he said, that, what product are you talking to me about? You dumped out an entire.
Oh my.
He said, you dumped a whole bag of hardware up here. I don't even know what the hell product you're talking about. And but to his credit, he told me, he challenged me. He said, hey, I want you to learn this, and here's a few things for you to go read, and here's a couple things for you to look at. When you've done that, come back and talk to me. And I did. And it took about 8 months, almost a year. But eventually I started to get a little bit of his business. And over the course of the next 2 years, I had all of his business.
Yeah. We call that incremental sales.
Yes.
Then get a little bit more, then get a little bit more. That's kind of a philosophy. So
I call it the fungus approach. That's how I got my wife. I said, I'm like a fungus. I just grow on you.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Yeah. You think about how, we're out there and we're trying every day and we're pushing. And sometimes we want to win it all in just one shot. You want the home run instead of just trying to get on first base, and maybe you can steal second base.
Yep.
And then somebody can bunt you over to third. So it's kind of more of the incremental part of it. So think about this. Now you've got this position that you're in, which by the way is very nice. And of course you wear a lot, you're welcome. You wear a lot of hats. So now in this position here, you think about, okay, what does the future look like? Where are you trying to go? What's the next step? What's the goal? And how do you get there?
So the goal for me is to turn this into a successful division of our company. We have a couple of other divisions, and mine is the smallest by far. I would like to turn it into the largest. To do that, I have to design and develop products and to fill the holes in our bag. We have a lot of clinical therapeutic areas that we don't address currently because we only have a couple of products. So to do that, you need the proper team of surgeons who can help you design and develop new products. You need a combination of good distributor partners that are out there, selling what you have now, so you have revenue coming in to support your growth and development. And you have to manage your P&Ls. So I think that's an important thing that I never understood when I was a sales guy. I would have a chance to close a sale, and sometimes my manager would come back and say, we can't do it because the margins aren't right. And I would get so frustrated, and all I could think about was, but there's the commission I'm going to make. What do you mean? And when you get to a higher level and you start managing your P&Ls and you see, let's just talk. So, your fixed cost of what does it take to operate an office, and, your cost of employment for everybody, and your benefits, and then, your cost of goods sold, shipping costs, shipping, sets in and out, you tie all of that stuff in and you start to look at it and you say, okay, now I can understand why my company says, X is our bottom line. We can't sell a product below, X, because we're going to actually be in the negative on that product. We don't mind. I think sometimes companies don't mind not making a profit to grow market share, they'll almost that point of diminishing returns. They'll get there. We'll sell those additional couple of units, even if there's no profitability, as long as we're not losing money because we're taking that market share from a potential competitor. But you have to look at your margins closely. And, if you're trying to grow, they need to be healthy. If you're trying to maintain, they need to be stable.
So the profits that you're trying to gain, those profits are things that obviously is going to not only benefit the company, but surely the more you sell, it puts more money in your pocket. So
Absolutely.
think about the guy who gets a job that's a fantastic job. They're in the medical device space. They might be in the pharmaceutical industry. They could just be anywhere. You could be selling hardware of any kind or kind of service. And they're motivated and driven by money. A lot of controversy around that because some people want you to be really money hungry because they feel that's a good motivator for you working hard. Others say, we don't want you just to be driven by money, but we want it to be more of what you talked about, Jason, and that is you have a product that is helping people. Where do you fall on the divide between liking people and wanting someone who's just really money driven versus somebody that is more, I'm here almost humanitarianly helping people? That's what drives me.
I think ideally a combination of both. You need to have somebody that's got some clinical passion and some savvy and that, sees that altruistic side, if you will. But at the same time, if they're not driven, if they're not motivated financially or motivated with, the thought of a promotion or going to the next step and going to the next level, somebody's going to come along and take their lunch. We used to always call it taking your lunch. If somebody comes in and they sell behind you and they take your customer, they took your lunch. I think that hungry individual, it's usually pretty hard to take their lunch, So I like somebody that's hungry, whether they're motivated by wanting promotions, whether they're motivated by wanting more money, whatever it is. I like to think that I can help instill the clinical piece with them and they can see the value, the benefit. And also, I think it's honing in your sales skills. Sometimes you may say like, look, I'm all about the money. That's all I'm all about.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, Eduardo. Let me teach you how to make even more money by having a little bit of compassion, by looking at this as something other than X's and O's and like, on the playbook of where all the players go. There are some schemes in here that we can use that are very beneficial to you and your success in growing your business, and also very successful to the reputation of the company and like what the public will see with our company and, what that's going to look like.
All right. I want to take you back inside the boardroom.
Sure.
I want you to picture and imagine that you're sitting in the boardroom. You've got 4 or 5 of your other executives in there, and there's an open requisition within the company. And you're going to now interview some of the candidates that currently work for the company so that it would be a promotion for them. Everybody likes to get promoted.
Yeah.
Companies like to tout how they promote from within. It breeds good savoir-faire, and certainly it makes the company feel like they're really taking care of their employees. The morale increases. But hold on a second. You've got this requisition that's open. It's a promotion for the people that currently work there. The skill set is different. So we talk a lot about, and there's a lot of books written about the skill sets. Just because you were great at this level,
yes,
doesn't mean you have the skills to take on the next level. But in the boardroom, the conversation's taking place, and you guys are thinking, who is it should we promote? Bob's been here for 12 years. He's really kind of next in line and has done a fantastic job. But you got Cindy over here. She's only been with us for 3 years, but her skills match better with what that promotion requires in terms of the competencies. In the boardroom, what do those conversations look like, and where do you fall in there?
I think that's where it has to be a round table again. It has to be, hey, here are the pros and cons of both candidates. Let's put them both up. Here are the things we like about Cindy. Here are the things we like about Bob. Here are maybe the things that we don't like as much about Cindy. Maybe it's less tenure, less experience. Here are the things we don't like about Bob, though he's done a great job. He doesn't have this skill set. It's going to be a learned skill set. And like you said, I've worked with it from the sales channel. I've had some wonderful sales managers that couldn't sell on their own to save their lives. And I've had some amazing sales reps that then became managers, and they were horrible managers, so you never know. So I think it's vetting it out, and I never want to be the only one to make that decision. That's why I value having those guys in the boardroom with me. Let's have an open discussion. Here's what I'm thinking. but I'm by no means is this a dictatorial thing. I'm telling you guys, this is what I'm thinking. I want feedback. I want to know, do you think I'm on the right page here? Do you think differently? And don't be shy. Like, let me know what you think and where you're coming from so we can make the best decision as an organization.
All right, I'm going to tease that out just a little bit because you've got one side, which is the executive, the management side, and then you've got the employees, the layperson. Perhaps it's a sales rep, maybe it's a supervisor that's trying to become a district manager or a regional
Mhm.
manager. So their thought process could be different.
Absolutely.
How do you manage what type of dissension may flow through the company when everyone hears that Bob did not get the promotion and everyone thought that he should have, and Cindy got the promotion, which everyone's like, she's new. How did they hire and promote her? How do you manage that? Because that's what goes on in
Yep.
employees' heads. This is the stuff that is what they call the water cooler talk, where they're
Yep.
thinking about that. So people want to know in that boardroom when that conversation is going on, you now have to manage it. What do you do? Is there a letter goes out? Is there a memo? Is there an email? Or is it just we hired Cindy, we didn't hire Bob, and you guys can, wonder what happened and why?
I think you have to address it. Otherwise, it becomes that purple elephant in the room. I don't think you can just say, this is our decision and that's it. And there are several different ways to do it. Me personally, I would go and sit with Bob and I would say, Bob, I know you're up for a promotion. This is what's coming down the pipeline. It doesn't really fit the skill set that you have right now. So let's have a conversation about where you see yourself in this company, where you want to go, what you want to do, and what you're willing to do to acquire the skills necessary. And maybe Bob finds out he doesn't actually want that promotion. He wants a different promotion that's more in line with what he's doing. But at least I'm going to have the conversation with him. What I don't want to do is have it be Bob hears through the grapevine that Cindy got the promotion and he didn't. I want to bring both of those candidates in, interview them, vet them, sit down with them, talk with them, discuss even Cindy, if she's perfectly aligned for this position, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's next? What do you want to do? What's your driver here? Where is this going with you? And what are you willing to put into this to get to that next level? Um, and then I think at least that water cooler dissension, if Bob actually is okay with the decision at the end of the day, no matter what people say at the water cooler, they see Bob okay, they're going to kind of be a little bit more okay. But if Bob is really upset, it could very quickly turn into a cancer in the organization. So I think you have to address it. You have to deal with it. Talk to them like they're human beings. Just talk to them like that. Find out what do you want to do? What's your track here? Where do you see yourself? What are you willing to do to acquire the skill set to get where you need to be? And I would tell Bob, if it was my decision was to go with Cindy, I'd say, Bob, you're definitely aligned for a promotion. You've been an incredible employee, but I want to sit with you and because I respect you enough to let you know this promotion doesn't match the skill set you have today. I'm not saying it won't tomorrow, but let's address this now. If you don't have the skill set, what can we do to get this skill set for you? Or is there a different skill set you'd like to develop or a different position that you want to work towards achieving here in the company?
That's really good management skills right there, Jason. I mean, that's the good stuff. And I can imagine right now, as people are listening to this saying, well, I wish my manager would have come to me when I didn't get the promotion. I wish they would have said something like that to me. So that's good,
I've
boardroom.
definitely I've definitely had times in my career where I was passed over for a promotion and I was never told why or how, and I really thought it was mine. So I think also having experienced that, I know that didn't feel good, and it definitely made me a little disgruntled as an employee. So as a leader now, from the sales and marketing end of it, I don't want to set us up to have that in an organization. I want to try to address those things head on and make everybody feel like they're a valued part of the team.
That is a great management trait there. And I hope all the managers and leaders that are listening to this will start employing that because just like you, I think we all have certainly been passed over for promotions and no one says anything.
Yeah,
And when you just knew it was yours, I mean, you just knew it. You won the trip, you were at the top of you knew it was yours. Everybody liked you. And then when you didn't get it, man, that hurts. That
yeah.
hurts badly. It really does. And so hopefully the managers that are listening will say, you know what? I've passed over many people and I've not gone back to them to say, hey, your skill set wasn't quite there on what we needed for this. And hopefully they offer, well, why don't you do this? Give them a plan
Mhm.
on how they can develop that skill because we all can learn.
And
So if you don't have it today, let's put together a plan, get you
to
some
get
training,
there.
do the things so that you can get there.
And to take it a step further, to be completely transparent, early in my career, I was passed over for a management position. The next day, I put my resume out. I know that happens. It's not uncommon. I talk with a lot of candidates that are asking me if I'm going to be adding headcount because they're looking to get out of an organization they're in because they don't feel like they're either valued or respected or whatever it may be. I think there's a lot of that out there.
There is, and I hear this story all the time, is that when you do get passed over, you put the resume out. I won't, but I could give you names of right now who either are looking or have already left
Yep.
a company because they got passed over for a promotion.
Yeah.
And the way it was done really hurt them. It
Yep.
really hurt them. There's a quote out there that says, your manager has a greater impact on your mental health than your therapist or your doctor.
I would agree with that.
I mean, when you've got a manager that doesn't have that, you talked about it earlier as empathy. We also use oftentimes we talk about emotional intelligence. When they're low in that, then what comes across, it just is painful. It just hurts.
And
So,
I think as a manager too, part of that empathy and just getting to know your team a little bit better. When I go do field travel with reps and I've, spent a day out in the field, whether it's with a manager or a rep, I always, at the end of the day, I say, let's carve out time, whether we sit over a coffee, dinner, a beer, whatever it is, and I'll ask them about their family, about their home life, like get to know them a little bit as an individual and as a human being. I feel like when I've had people do that for me and they've asked me questions about my home life, my family, and I'm very proud of my family. I love my family. So I like to talk about them. So when somebody gives me that latitude and they let me tell them about my family, I tend to like them more. I say this, all right, this person's vested in me. You know what I mean? They're asking me questions about my people and I'm telling them a little bit of my story. I think as managers, we need to do that and focus on doing that. Um, it's going to make a tighter team, a more cohesive team, and you're going to understand your salespeople better. You'll understand what are their drivers, what are their motivators. Or if I see, the effort or the performance falling off from a rep, I can probably identify something going on in their personal life that's leading to that because I've taken the time to get to know them.
mm, that's really good. You talk about that, and what came to mind as you were saying that is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
There you
Very
go.
quote. It's been
I
out
like
there
that.
for a long time. Yeah. So that's really good. This is great, Jason. I mean, your story is quite remarkable. Just
Thank
the
you.
fact that you keep going. I love it.
Well,
I,
after losing my daughter, I'll never forget. I was, there that night at her wake, and all of her friends were coming through, and she was 16 at the time. So these little 16-year-old girls and boys are coming in, and I've got a smile on my face, and they're looking at me like, "Oh my God, how can you be smiling right now?" And I said, "Well, I'm a man of faith. I know I'm going to see her again. I'll have a conversation with her when I do, but I'm going to see her again." And it brought down the level of anxiety in the room, and they all got a little bit more comfortable. They were all able to sit and to kind of breathe deeply and just say, and then I talked with them individually and I said, you never know how strong you are until you have to be. And it was a learning experience for me. And, I had the weight of the world on my shoulders for a while. I ended up with sole custody of my other two children. And, it was a very difficult time, but I've come out on the other side of it a much stronger, a much more faithful, and much more dedicated father, husband, and employee.
you're very driven. I can imagine the people right now thinking to themselves how impressed they are and that they want to be like that, to hold on and to keep going in the midst of everything, especially after losing a child. It's got to be the hardest thing in the world that anyone ever goes through. And
It's
to have a smile on your face.
Well, and afterwards, it's funny. I had a friend who had told me, there's not a language in the world that's ever existed that has a word for a parent that's lost a child. If you lose a spouse, you're a widow or a widower.
Mm.
Um, but there's not a word for a parent losing a child because it's just not supposed to happen. And I really that impacted me. I never thought about that. And I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of spot on. But that, like I say, I've turned that into one of my drivers now. I think for the rest of my life, I will always ask myself or tell myself, am I doing something right now that would make my daughter Hannah proud? And
It's good.
if the answer is yes, I'm on the right track. If the answer is no, it's okay. I'm not always going to be perfect. Then you redirect, you know?
I like that.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah. I'm sure your daughter is very proud of you. I'm sure
I'd like to, I'd like to think so.
yeah, she's very proud of it. This has been good, Mr. Jason. Your story is quite remarkable.
Thanks, Eduardo.
It is. The things that you've done and your accomplishments, and certainly your words of wisdom, the things that you've imparted out to the audience today to help them get to where they're trying to go. And I think that they'll be able to identify, especially with the personal tragedy. And we're so sorry for the loss of your beloved daughter. Yeah. But just being able to keep going and having sole custody, that speaks right there. As a man, having sole custody of 2 kids, I mean, that within itself speaks volumes. Talks not only about your character and certainly your manhood, but all the things that go into, what makes you you. And so I'm sure you are a wonderful, fantastic leader that your staff loves, and the people within your organization can certainly appreciate being led by you.
Thank you.
So that's great. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of the Inside Scoop with Mr. Jason Bazemore. We thank him for his story and everything that he said. We hope that you've enjoyed it. And once again, if something touched you and it resonated with you and you'd like to become part of our viewing audience, we encourage you to go ahead and subscribe and find us. We're available everywhere you can find your podcast. And for this episode, we say thank you very much and goodbye for this one. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Eduardo.
For more exclusive leadership insights, be sure to subscribe to the Inside Scoop on YouTube and Spotify. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that share button and spread the word. See you next time on the Inside Scoop.